have to be any crazy formal introductions. This is the beginning.
All right, and action.
So it's exciting because this is like our first episode.
It's fantastic.
And I'm super excited that you're like my first guest. It's so cool. Because we met at the Stampede Art Show a year ago, like almost today, right? Like, or a couple of days. Yeah. So for anyone that doesn't know the Calgary Stampede, they have the artist showcase, right? Which is this giant building filled with, there's like a wine garden and there's all of these beautiful artist spaces that you get juried into. You have to submit all of your art to the Calgary Stampede. They go through a jury process and then come back and let you in. And it's very exciting.
Super exciting.
Do you remember when you got your, because this is the first year you applied, right?
Yeah, I was over the moon. As a person who doesn't love big crowds and things like that, like I'd gone to the Stampede before. I'd actually worked at the Stampede before, totally unrelated to art. And I discovered this hall that's like a convention center hall that's done up in beautiful lighting, artist booths everywhere, wine gardens, calming music. And it's like, it really is an oasis in the middle of the excitement and kind of the volume that's too high of Stampede.
Right.
Like Stampede's wonderful, but there's this peace and quiet that comes with going through these artist studios with still like the energy in the room. It was always on my, bucket list. Like one day when I'm like 65, maybe I'll be, maybe I'll apply and I'll get in and I'll be an established enough artist to get in.
And you were a part-time artist then?
Yeah, well, this like university, just not, just painting for a hobby at that point. And then last year was my last year in my 20s. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go for it and just try, just apply.
Right.
The worst thing that'll happen is I get a rejection letter. And I was able to get in and was also able to work next to pretty cool artists like you.
Yeah, we were neighbors. There was one in between us, right? I think.
No, we were neighbors.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a hallway between us, so we weren't super close.
Right.
A little bit of space.
Right. But and we should talk about that a little bit too, because if there's any other artists that are listening that want to do shows like that, like you had some really interesting learnings really early on, right? Like a good friend of ours, Edward, came around to your booth and he like rearranged your booth for you. Do you remember that? Yeah,
totally.
So cool.
So grateful. And I think, one of my learnings was put your trust in experienced people who've been at trade shows and things like this before, because, I'm coming in and setting up what I think maybe looks aesthetically pleasing. And then, looking at like, how do people, like, what's the flow through is it intimidating to walk in because it looks like they'll never get out and like moving around the space to make it really open and welcoming. So yeah, lots of great advice from experienced artists.
Yeah. Because one of the things that you had done, so basically the booth, I think it's like 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 or something. And then a lot of artists will put like a table out in front. So as the clients come in, there's like a table and then there's just an opening enough for them to come into the booth. And then you had like some of your smaller paintings and stuff on that table and you were kind of sitting at the table there, like right at the entrance, right? And then Edward moved that out of the way. What did he say to you? Do you remember?
I think he just came in and said like, this is like, if I have advice for you, I think it should go here. And Serge Dubé also came by with some advice. And yeah, like I was doing really well selling those small paintings on the first table. But what I really wanted to sell the big showstoppers at the back. And as soon as I, made it less intimidating for people to walk in and, for them to see like, yeah, I can come and go without having to talk to the person, having to talk to the artist if they don't want to talk to me. So yeah, because one of the things is they don't want that table there because it makes the clients and the people that are looking at the art feel trapped, right? Totally.
Yeah.
You don't want to feel like you're corralled when you're browsing through art and just trying to enjoy a glass of wine and take in some pretty painting.
Yeah. And I remember that as well, just like being an art lover and going to a show and then going into the booth and someone would have it set up like that. And then they just kind of sidle into the open space, like where you can actually get in.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're literally like, I'm going to have to like push past this artist to get out of here. And so it makes it kind of nerve wracking. And then you don't even want to look at the art anymore. You just kind of feel like I got to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And your setup was great. You had the long table down the middle,
right?
And you sat at the side where it didn't keep people from going in and kind of doing their own thing, but also gave them the opportunity to talk to you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember if it was Edward or someone else, but someone had given me some advice very similar to that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was exactly the same, but yeah, basically just make sure that there's an entry and an exit and, not to crowd them and stuff like that. Because you and I talked about this a little bit before as well. You were sort of learning at the same time, like this was your first time with a bunch of people because the Stampede is incredibly busy and there will be waves of, there'll be no one and then a show will let out or something and suddenly you have like 20 people in your booth. And so there's a real learning for you. I remember as well, you had said like just learning to talk to people and what to say to them and stuff like that. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah. And I'm a little bit of an extroverted introvert, like down to my core. I'm not a super extroverted person, but I don't mind chatting with people. And so the idea of like being that person who like goes and approaches people, that's not really what I'm
that's right.
What I'm used to. And so it's finding that like tactful way of approaching people, letting them know you're the artist. That was one thing that like maybe worked against me a little bit. I don't stand out as being like the type of person who's the artist in the booth at Stampede. Like I know when my husband was helping me in the booth or when my mother-in-law was like wandering around, they all thought they were the artists instead of me.
Right.
So letting people know.
Because of your age or like just because you don't have like a jaunty hat or something like that?
Well, yeah, probably both. Definitely my age was something that people were like, oh, you're the artist? Like, how old are you? Like, I know your key question is, I have these photos. And my key question was like, how old are you? Are you sure you're the artist? So,
that was your question.
Oh my gosh, it was a question. These baby cheeks don't help me out with looking like a mature artist. So.
Yeah, that was one of the things that all of the artists would talk about, like at coffee or when you were visiting and stuff like that, was like, what are the most common questions that you get from people when they come in, right? Yeah. And some of them are great and some of them are funny. And like, so for you, it was like, how old are you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
A little bit about my style and then like, how old are you?
Yeah.
That's the question you ask women all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Totally.
I think it's safe to ask when they're like when you're really young and you know that the answer you're going to get is like, oh, I'm 22. I think then but yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it as flattery, but
right.
Because there's no point in taking it any other way.
Yeah. And so, part of the reason for doing this too was with COVID, everything has slowed down and we are actually supposed to be at the Stampede right now. And you were in the show, I was in the show, and so many of our other friends were in the show. And it's been difficult, but you've been like making a pretty good go of it. Because we were just talking before the show, like you released a new line of paintings and you've had some success. So tell me a little bit about that. And while you do that, I'm going to like put up your website where you have that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess last year I was accepted into a half booth or a full booth for half of the show. So I came in the second half.
Right, because the Stampede splits it up, right? Yeah. So if you're applying for the Stampede or if you have any aspirations to do the Stampede, basically you can choose to you can apply to do the whole show or the first half or the second half of the show. And usually a new artist, they appear to give the half shows to them. So it's a little bit less stressful and you kind of get your feet wet.
Absolutely. And they get to test the waters with us as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this year I was really excited because I would be there for opening night and for the kickoff. And so it was going to be something new and a whole different level of exposure to collectors, just at a bit of a different level. And so I was thinking, you know, when the Stampede Art Show was canceled, or the Stampede in general was canceled, what can I do to continue to build excitement and you know, drive a little bit of interest towards a collection release? Because before this, what I was doing was, you know, I'd paint a painting, I'd post it on, you know, the social media platforms, and then I'd say like available in my gallery online, and then I'd paint another painting and I'd do that. And one of the great things about art shows is those opening nights where, you know, a collector can come and see a whole brand new collection, and they may have seen like little snippets of it as the artist was creating, maybe as they're doing the process shots and posting on their social media platforms. But seeing the whole collection together is a really exciting moment. And I know that's something that I really loved going, you know, to Stampede over the past years, or even to a gallery opening, just seeing the new body of work.
Right.
And so what I did this year, instead of just doing kind of like this trickle feed of this is my one new painting and this is my next new painting, I worked on a collection release with the help of some online art marketing courses that I took. And I put together a 10-piece collection to release just before the Stampede. So still to bring some joy and color to people who were excited to go to the Stampede and excited to see the new pieces that were created by the artists who would have been there. But then to make it available a bit more of an accessible way during COVID.
Right. So did you release all of these like at once, like as a, like this is my collection, or were these ones posted on social media individually as well?
So they were posted like as in progress shots, or, you know, kind of like a funny angle, like this is a piece that's coming out, like look at the colors, that sort of a thing. But they were all released together. My email list, my mailing list, collectors gained access to the website to purchase them prior to just the public. So they got kind of like a 2-hour window to browse the collection on their own, kind of like the stir up night where it's an invitation only.
Right. Some exclusive access.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was really fun just to put it all together, to still have that build up to a show, which is just a really exciting thing to be part of as an artist. But you kind of had to make your own excitement and your own like build up this time around, because everything's really online these days. Right.
Yeah. And will be probably for the next year, I would imagine. Yeah. So I'm just kind of showing some of your work while you were talking there. So yeah, I love it. We'll kind of go back and take a look at some of your other work as well, so people can get an idea of like how this is kind of different from your, like this is similar and different, right? Because you still got like sort of the prairie stuff. So let's maybe just pop back here. And if I just go to your original gallery.
So I'm a little bit of an unconventional artist in the sense that I haven't settled on one style. I've settled on two, and I'm pretty firm with that. I know it's not maybe the best marketing approach, but as a creative person who, like, I like to get my hands into anything. I used to do pottery and woodworking. I used to do silversmithing. I need lots of different creative outlets. Settling on one style just didn't gel with me. And I find that bouncing back and forth between two different styles, but they begin to influence each other, and I get to push myself into some new territory. So the collection that you were just showing, my newest one has been a lot of sunsets and prairie fields, and a lot of those like free moving brush strokes. Like you're not like delineated sections of color. It's a lot of blending and big brush strokes. And then I have a little bit more of my stained glass style. If you click on that second one down there, that one there, you can see where I go for more of those blocks of color. here as well. And it is a bit more of that like stained glass approach. And so what I'm trying to do right now with, having the online marketing as being something that all artists are trying to figure out, what I'm going to be doing is collection releases in each of those different styles. So as opposed to doing kind of like a mishmash of everything, this past style was focusing on bold sweeping brushstrokes, prairie landscapes. My next collection will likely be a little bit more of these stained glass style acrylic paintings with mountains, wildflowers, and then it just gives a little bit of a more like cohesive approach to my collection.
That's interesting because one of the things that I get asked a lot, like because my style is so specific, is a lot of people that approach me at the Stampede will they're sort of aspiring artists. They'd love to get into the Stampede and do the show, and they'll ask me like, what do I think like is the most important thing to to do in order to get into the show? They might have applied before or whatever. And my response is usually to make sure that you have like a cohesive sort of single voice or style or whatever it is, whatever the terminology is that works best for you. But more than anything else, so that if someone was to look at your work or a body of work, that they would either, if they knew you as an artist, they would be able to see a new painting and then recognize that as yours, right? And I mean, yours is very much like that. Like, if I'm just scrolling through my Instagram feed and I have a lot of artists that I follow and that follow me. And as soon as I see yours, I'm like, oh, there's Carmen's, right? Like I know it's yours like 99% of the time.
Well, it's a blinding blast of color on your screen.
Yeah, exactly. But
so it is to follow black and white artists like your paintings. We'll be like, oh yeah, that's Carmen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's interesting that you have, like, as you said, two styles. Like I still see some similarities between the two, but they are like rather distinct. So like, you've got this dog here, right? That's kind of that stained glass approach. And then is this one from your new series here, or?
It sold before I started the collection, but it inspired the collection. Yeah.
It's same idea. And so have you noticed that one of the series is more popular than the other? Or
as soon as I finally get to the point where I'm like, maybe I should just really focus on this style, I'm getting a lot of uptake, then something comes up where it's like a big sale or like one of my big pieces sells and somebody commissions like two more in the other style. And so it's really hard for me to wrap my head around giving one of them up. And I know that for like my professional advancement and perhaps like representation in galleries and things like that, it would probably be helpful to pick one. But I'm stubborn and I'd be happy to say, and with any applications that I've done, like with the Stampede show, I've always said, like, if there's one style that you prefer to have represented, then let me know and I will cater to that, no problem.
That's smart.
So, and then I have collectors who have purchased one of each style, or have a variety of my different takes on landscapes in their homes. And it's
interesting.
It is. So I definitely, I know I don't obey the advice of many people.
Well, I mean, rules are there to be broken too, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I have a lot of fun, and I think that's the most important thing. When I start feeling a little stale in a certain style, and I do, like I need, like I said, I need that diversity. I need to be able to jump between different things, different mediums. I don't have enough time in my life to actually have different mediums. And so instead I focus on two styles, and it keeps me fresh and happy, which means that I'm painting, which is
cool.
The most important part.
Yeah. It's kind of like having two kids. Like, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite kid? Like, which of your styles, if you had to get rid of one, like, would you get rid of?
Is it
impossible?
All over the place. I'm all over the place. Yeah. For 6 months, I'll be like, oh, this is definitely the style. It has to be this.
Right.
And then something will happen. Either I'll paint a piece in another style that I just feel really inspired by. Usually it comes with a commission. It's like, oh, I've been painting prairie landscapes for, a month and a half now. And then I'll get a commission for something in more of that stained glass style. And commissions always push you a little out of your comfort zone, usually because of perhaps guidance on subject matter and composition. Like if somebody has like a specific photo, and then I fall in love with my other style again. So no favorite kid.
Right. That's good.
My favorite kid is acrylic paint on canvas.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'm kind of the same as well. I find that if I'm painting bears, for instance, right, and and then I put them out on social media, and they're popular, and I get a lot of feedback and some sales. Suddenly I'm like, oh, bears, let's do bears. Right? I'm like the painter of bears, but and I think because it kind of gets momentum, and I like painting them, obviously, and then you get that feedback, right? And you kind of get, and I try really hard to not just be guided by what's popular and what's not popular, and I try to paint for myself and what I love, right? But I mean, it's hard. It's hard to completely ignore. If people are going crazy for one thing and there's no interest in the other, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think like both of us have many years of experience doing art, but maybe are a little bit newer into the professional art scene.
Right.
I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn saying that, but for me, it's been like, 2 years or so that I've really I've headed a little bit more seriously into the professional art world. Although I have 13 years experience doing this, there is something about just the validation of someone saying, yes, this is worthwhile to be hanging on my wall. And when you get that validation and you get that, seal of approval, then it does influence the direction you go. And I, maybe when we're 20-year established professional artists, will just do whatever we want.
Right.
But I think there's just always that piece just in human nature to want validation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to ignore. I posted a couple of questions on social media before we did the podcast, because I wanted to see if anyone had any questions for you and stuff like that. So these are like relatively straightforward. I'm not going to throw anything ridiculous at you.
Throw me the curveballs or the politician's answer.
Yeah. Well, no. So one of the questions was they were curious, like how long that you had painted for, but also like how much time you spend painting, like during the week. Like you're a full-time artist now, part-time artist?
Part-time artist. So I have been painting for, I think I picked up my first set of acrylic paints about 13 years ago. Right. And you probably don't want to see some of those paintings.
we all have those in our closet, Carmen.
I know. I used to do things that were way more similar to what you do, except in pen and ink.
Oh, okay.
And then, I was in university for something totally unrelated to art, and competitive program, a little bit of stress, needed some stress relief, and decided that highly detailed photorealistic pen drawings were maybe not the stress relief outlet that I was looking for. So I bought a big fat paintbrush, canvas, and just started experimenting. So I think when I said it's really been in the past 2 years that I've been having more dedicated studio time, studio being in my home studio, but being able to say, yeah, actually, I'm not going to fit this in, pick up a paintbrush once every month or two and try something out. I would say in my typical week now, I'm looking at probably 15 hours of paint on canvas time. Right. And then a good at least 5 hours, 10 hours focusing on the art business. Some weeks it's far more. Right. Some weeks, life gets a bit in the way, but I'm really trying to not have life get in the way. And honestly, the progress that happens when you spend the time actually doing, like it's training for a marathon. And, if you only, start putting your runners on the day before the marathon, you're going to, maybe make it across the finish line, but it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
But same with painting, right? Like if I can get my hands covered in paint, which always happens, if I can get my hands covered in paint, like 3 or 4 times a week, I can see the progress in my work, and that's so satisfying.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I do speak to a lot of people that will ask me, about that, like, how much time do you put into paint and stuff like that, to be able to see progress. And, I know that a lot of people that I end up talking to, like, that's one of their biggest problems, I think, is finding the time in order to actually make progress. I mean, when I try to think of the different things that moved me along, it was having a mentor. So I mentored under Terry Isaac for quite a few years, and I would come up with my own concepts, and then Terry lived out in BC, so I would email him stuff, and then once every year I'd pack all my paintings into a box and drive out there, and he would like tear some apart and love some, and then give me some encouragement and send me back, right? But having said all of that, I always had time to paint. And, I did have a full-time job, and I have kids and all of those things. But finding hours a day to paint was like just one of the most important things that, I saw progress in my work. And it wasn't necessarily like 10 or 12 hours a day that I needed, but it was just consistency.
Yeah.
And and it made such a difference. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't have that time, right? Like I don't have time to do all of that. And I mean, sure, some people don't. Some people work 2 jobs and stuff like that. But my response is always, well, what do you do in your leisure, right? Like, do you watch a lot of television? What other things do you do that perhaps you could cut out and actually put into your art? Because for me, what excites me and, makes me feel like I'm alive and, what I want to do is paint, right? So if I'm doing anything else, I'm thinking about painting.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to binge watch on Netflix. I don't want to go on a skiing trip with my friends. I want to go into my basement and I want to paint. And so I feel like if you don't have that desire, that it can be very difficult to have that progress.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And I know you're a little obsessive as well with it, right?
Yeah. And I think like having been in both of those camps, right? Like prior to 2 years ago, I just, I worked more than full time. I prioritized like fitness and things like that. It's still important, of course. Sure. I'm not an athlete. Let's just clear that up. I'm not winning any races here, but like, those were my priorities. I work in healthcare, which is an incredibly rewarding and sometimes quite draining place to work.
Right.
And it really was, where can I find the time? And I don't have kids, so my life isn't quite as complicated as yours. But, I have the job that if I wanted to, I could put in many, many extra hours and still love it and just like fall into my work. And so you can squeeze out all of the opportunities to paint if you want to.
Right.
And so I looked at, what does your schedule look like? What does your family's schedule look like? For me, I'm an early bird, and my husband likes to sleep in, to a reasonable person would on a weekend till 8:30 or something like that. Whereas I'm like
8:30 sleeping in.
Well, yeah, and then I'm like, okay, it's like 4:45, 6 o'clock. My eyes are open. I'm inspired. So that, right there, you buy yourself, 2, 3, 4 hours by the time the day's up and running, and then you can go and do your weekend things, right? And so working full time, finding those gaps in your family's schedule to be able to say, this is a really inspiring time for me. And there's no other commitments aside from, scrolling through Instagram, watching Netflix, like the things that like don't bring fulfillment to your life. Like, where do you want to spend your time?
Right.
And that's not to say I don't waste any hours in my week.
No. Yeah, for sure.
But there is the opportunity to find time, and it might be in strange places, right? Like mine is a good Saturday morning, wake up really early, set up my easel, listen to a podcast. I'll be listening to yours.
What do you listen to now?
Oh, I listen to some really interesting things, and some really probably things that people find less interesting.
Do you have a favorite, or?
Kind of a little bit of everything. I dive into some of the economics and personal finance and like those types of things. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to numbers. So,
well, that's cool.
Yeah. And then, just it's that peace and finding your flow and finding that uninterrupted time. I find that really important.
Yeah. It is so important. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts too. One interesting thing that I had read about in some of the marketing stuff that I was looking into was a lot of people think that audio is going to be really big, right? Podcast audio and stuff like that. I mean, we're a visual medium, so I wanted to do video so we could see your work and stuff like that. But we'll also offer this in audio. And a lot of that is because of that sort of shortened attention span, right? Mm-hmm. We're all doing something. So a lot of the time people will use audio, whether they're, if you're an artist, if you're painting, you probably have a podcast or music or some form of audio, right? Yeah. And I mean, if I run out of podcasts, sometimes I'll just have Friends on Netflix on in the background, and I'm not even watching it. I'm just listening to it. Right.
Yeah. The kinds of shows where you don't need to, you don't need to see the discreet slip of a hand and like a murder mystery or something like that. It's like, it's Friends. I know what Rachel's up to.
Yeah. Joey's doing the thing again. It's fine. Yeah. So another question, which kind of leads into what you were saying about like scrolling through Instagram, was like, how much time do you spend on like social, promoting your work, marketing, and like if you're comfortable sharing, like what kind of marketing do you do?
Yeah, so I'm pretty terrible at all of it. So let's just put that caveat out there.
Well, if you're terrible at it, you're going to be killing it in a year because your release was great. I mean, you sold quite a few pieces in your.
Yeah, I think as you saw, as you were setting me up for this this podcast, I'm a bit nervous. I don't love putting myself out into the world. Like I'm a behind the scenes kind of gal.
Right.
So, if you are on my personal Facebook page, you won't actually know much about me because I never post anything.
Right.
And so, that realization probably about 6 months ago or so that, the art world is shifting a bit. Mm-hmm. If we're looking at tapping into, the millennial sort of age group for, they're going to be the prime collector group in 10, 15 years. They're starting to be getting into art collecting now. It's like things are changing, and social media is, everybody spends a lot of time on it. And so I did sign up for a course called the Studio Source in October, and then totally neglected doing the modules right away. But with COVID starting, I figured, okay, this online marketing for artists is something I need to dive into. And so, looking at some of those pillars, so email marketing, trying to build your contact list. Mine is not very big yet because I've just started to build it.
And sorry to interrupt. Are some of the email contacts that you got? I'm sure you collected some at the Stampede last year.
Yeah, right? Through the Stampede, as well as through social media. So as I was marketing this collection release, it was a lot of that, like looking at the scarcity model, saying, yes, you're going to have like collectors on my studio list are going to get early access to this collection, sign up for the mailing list, and you'll be able to review the work before anybody else does.
So you're putting a request in through social, through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, to basically ask people to provide their email address so that they can go on this sort of early access newsletter or whatever.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
idea.
Focusing on regular content on social media. I focus mostly on Instagram because I'm finding the business side of Facebook just doesn't reach many people. If I post it on my personal Facebook, it's like wildfire. If I post it on my business side, it's I think just the way the algorithms are working.
Yeah, I think so. Like I've done some advertising on Instagram and Facebook. I had like two running sort of next to each other, basically the same ad. And I mean, I don't know. Would you like? I feel like Facebook has a little bit sort of an older base than Instagram, right? Like you got TikTok, which is like the youngsters, like my kids, right? And then Instagram, and then Facebook, like that age demographic. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's how I perceive it, right? And so I think that with my art originally, I started with Facebook because I thought, most of the people that are going to be buying paintings that are, 3,000+ are going to be, probably not 20-year-olds, right? Yeah. They're going to be 30, 40, 50. They're going to be getting a house. They're going to be looking for artwork, or they're going to, they're going to be collectors and stuff like that. So I did do the Facebook thing, but surprisingly, the response on Instagram has been great. Yeah. And it's definitely a younger crowd, and they're more interested in my work and getting prints and stuff like that. But you have a wide variety of prices as well. And so, yeah. So, I mean, more to come because I just started it. But I found them to be very similar. But yeah, the who I'm reaching has been a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is different. I think there's a lot more of the personal connections on Facebook, and like people that I actually know them, right? As opposed to venturing into Instagram, where you start to get some of that that organic beyond your social circle, right? And people who you've crossed paths with in your life before. Yeah. So I am focusing on Instagram, but then you can link it through to post automatically on Facebook, which is fantastic because I don't need to spend as much time rewriting posts. Oh God, yeah, I don't even want to get into that. I have some weird issue. I can't link both of them, so I have to post on both. But But anyways, So back to the question, because I'm really great at talking on tangents.
No, me too. So I apologize. Yeah.
If I could spend like 1 minute a week on social media marketing, that would be fantastic. Right. And so there are different programs that you can use to schedule your posts. I found that to be really, really helpful as I started started marketing the release of this collection. So I held back and I didn't post things like right away as I was painting them. I was photographing it and then maybe having like a bit of a delay. So a week later, I would start to post some progress photos. So I could go ahead and schedule a bunch of posts ahead of time. And then that took the pressure off. I scheduled about a month of them, took the pressure off of me so that I could focus on painting. Right. So that it helps to sit at your desk for half the day and do all of your writing and figure out what direction you want to take your marketing. After my 1 month of posts that were scheduled came up, and I didn't have I didn't make the time to do it again. I'm now kind of in that scatter shoot. So I like the idea of setting up the schedules for posting and stuff like that, but are you able to respond to all of the people in a timely manner, like as they, like and comment on your work? Are you still monitoring then? Yeah. So then, just as everybody has their phones with them all the time. Right. Yeah. You get a notification. Yeah. So I have a phone that's like, an older phone, and I call it my art business phone, and it will get notifications from Instagram and notifications from Facebook and my website. And specifically, so my personal phone isn't buzzing all the time with things going off. But then this phone I can check on a regular basis without having to get sucked into scrolling through Instagram for hours. It keeps me on top of things from the business side. So I know, my scheduled post maybe is, coming out at 5:30 in the evening. I'll check it after dinner and be able to respond to comments, messages, without it taking over my life, because I think that is something that's a really fine balance with the addictive nature of social media, right? We want to be painting. We don't want to be spending hours on.
But it's so difficult now. Like, I don't follow the algorithms and how all of that works, but I do understand that, as a platform starts, right? Like TikTok's a good example. Like TikTok starts, and right now, I don't use hashtag or TikTok. I don't know if it's like hashtags or whatever. So I could be like completely out to lunch. My kids use it, but I do know that right now it's got like a lot of what they call organic reach, right? So if you hashtag something, there's a very good chance that, other people will see that just organically, right? Whereas like Facebook being a much more mature product and Instagram becoming more mature, they have less organic reach as the advertising platform starts to kick in. Right. So, me hashtagging something on Facebook, there's a very low chance that that's going to get out and get seen. Right. And Instagram's becoming like that too. So, they have the options to actually put out ads and stuff like that. But I didn't realize that the social media platforms mature like that, right? As they get monetized.
It's actually something that just makes me feel really discouraged, honestly, like the amount of time that I've put into figuring out like how to optimize hashtag use and how to like what kind of posts are responded to better than others. And, just seeing like if you read about how things have evolved on Instagram and Facebook as they change their algorithms, as they've moved to like sponsored posts and things like that. Like, honestly, I never want to learn TikTok, but maybe 2 years from now, we'll be like, we're totally obsolete on these platforms that we understand. We need to then hire your kids to teach us how to use these new apps.
Well, and in a lot of the business podcasts that I follow and stuff, as funny as it sounds that TikTok would be something that, artists or anything else like that, not music artists, obviously, but artists like us, it's highly recommended to use it just because it does have that organic reach right now. And now you can kind of get in and get a foothold. I mean, but I don't, I only have time for like 2 platforms.
I know.
And it's so hard. I mean, I cannot never complain about success and selling your artwork. Right. But it's amazing, like as, if you do like a little ad on Instagram or whatever, and if it actually takes hold, it's amazing how much that pulls you away from actually painting. Like you said, you're a morning person. I'm a night person. Yesterday, all I was doing was fielding requests about prints and stuff like that all day. And then, so by like 9 o'clock at night, I sat down and I ended up painting until like 3 a.m. because I hadn't done a thing. And so it's a hard balance.
It's so hard. And, honestly, I wish I was born 30 years ago where I didn't have to worry about all this social media stuff, where it really was about painting, gallery representation, and painting.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, even back then, like, I don't know, I think it's like a blessing and a curse because, yes, we are, having to do all of this stuff and, learn all of that takes away from our painting. But I think that back in the day, like, when, Robert Bateman was the king of wildlife and stuff like that, I think it was even harder to get in because you had to have someone approve your work. Like no one could look at your work until someone in some company somewhere said, we'll distribute it for you. I mean, you were stuck to your own little gallery or your own little show.
Yeah, that's fair. And, I am really grateful for the reach that, some of the collectors that I have wouldn't be walking through some of the gallery spaces. They found me on social media. They want my art on their walls, and it wouldn't have come across me otherwise. So I am grateful. Because I'm, by tendency a little bit more of a private person, and I don't like putting myself out there as much. It is a little tricky. Also, 30 years ago, being a woman in art, I'm sure was a little bit more complicated. So we'll be grateful for the advancements that have happened there as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's one more question.
Sure.
So it was a business question as well, and just kind of around money. So do you reinvest a portion of the money that you make in your art into marketing and stuff like that? Or do you have a strategy for that? I don't. And so I was listening to something very interesting recently about, taking, how they'll tell you, like, when you're young, put 10% of your salary away, right? Saving something when you're older. And the same idea with this is, whatever it is that you earn in your art is reinvesting that into, whatever it is, whether it's marketing or anything. Do you do anything like that?
I reinvest into my habit for hoarding canvases.
Oh my God! I just
looking at the stocks.
Really? Make you tilt your camera. And are all artists like that? Yeah. Let's see your.
Let's just see.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, yeah.
One of the many high shelves filled with canvases in my place. So,
yeah. My wife went away this weekend, so I got a bunch of new panels, and so I ended up like hiding them in the rafters of our garage. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, and I live 3 blocks from an art store.
Right.
It's dangerous stuff, Keith.
Oh, so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah. So when it comes to the business side of things, what I've done is I've invested in courses. I've invested in platforms that help take me away from the computer and put me in front of my canvases.
Nice.
So I haven't invested in marketing. Mm-hmm. I don't know as much in the art marketing world. I haven't really explored deeply into how do sponsored posts respond compared to other ones. And my understanding from some of the art groups that I am part of is that sponsored posts generate a lot of conversation, but they don't generally generate more sales. Mm-hmm. And so I have nothing to back that statement up. But as somebody who really likes to buy canvases, I'm like, okay, fine, I won't sponsor my posts, I'll buy canvases instead. So what I've done is, I don't know if you're interested at all in some of the background and investments that I've put my time into or my money into, but keeping an archive of my work, keeping track of my sales, doing the invoicing, having a photo log of everything that I've done, who are my collectors, all of that, just a nightmare until I got onto a platform that's specific for art that will do, these are your annual sales, these are your expenses, you can track all your receipts, you can track your archive of paintings. Honestly, that's been, I've probably saved a good, 300 plus hours in the past year, which I've been able to paint in. So having those kinds of platforms, absolutely invest in them. If there's something that can make you spend more time in front of your art and less time in front of your computer, I would invest in it. Yeah.
That's so smart, because when I say reinvesting, I didn't necessarily mean all business. And I think that what you said sort of hits that point home, right? Reinvesting in yourself, right? Reinvesting in something that will save you time so you can paint more, whether it's just organizing, stuff like that, taking courses, working with a mentor, depending where you are in your art career, if you're still learning how to use your medium and you still haven't quite been able to create the work to look the way that you want it to yet. Investing in online courses and stuff like that. Just kind of pumping it back into your art career.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
I think where, how I've approached it in my business is what am I terrible at? What are my pain points? And is there something out there that can solve that? So that I can do what I love doing and what I'm good at doing. And so for me, having my 2 hats that I wear in my career world, Time is a big pain point.
Mhm.
There may be like a technique thing that's a pain point, and then I might, look for a course from like somebody who's just an expert in color balance, or some of those sorts of things. If that's an area that I'm feeling like I'm just struggling with this type of thing, is there an artist that I admire who's put out a course who can tackle some of that? Fix your pain points. Right now, my sales, I'm quite happy with it. I mean, obviously everybody wants more sales. So my pain point isn't maybe necessarily looking at doing sponsored posts and having, more exposure there. I want to focus on expanding those quality relationships with the followers and the collectors that I have already. And so, finding the marketing course that is, how do you interact with your target audience that you already have? That's something that I'm focusing on. So anyway, long answer. I'm really good at long answers.
No, that's a good answer. And even what you said there too, just about like interacting with your group. Like, I think it's so important that you don't concentrate on your number of followers, right? Like, it's not size, it's depth, right? And so who are those followers? Because if I have 100,000 followers and 10 of them comment and, like my work and engage with me, then I don't really have that many followers, right? I have 10. Right. So cultivating that group and having them generally excited and enjoying your work. Right. When you talk about ads and stuff like that, like if I put out any ads or anything, there's never asking anyone for a sale or anything like that. I just really want to, if I'm going to do an ad, it's to show people my work, to see if they like it. Hopefully they engage with me and come over and follow me. But I'm at no point saying, please buy my stuff. I'm just saying, if you like it, join my tribe, and we'll enjoy it together. If you're an artist, I'll talk to you about it. I can answer your questions or whatever. Right.
Yeah. And I think, especially in times of a pandemic where we're not getting out to galleries, I'm an art lover. Like I don't just paint. I love looking at other people's art. I love, spending a day walking through all the galleries in Canmore and just taking it all in. And my alternative for that has been find those artists on Instagram, follow them. And when I'm like having my morning coffee and scrolling through things, I can still get a bit of that gallery experience on like a little 3" by 3" square. But it's not optimal,
so true. It's so true. I love buying art books in the pandemic as well. Yeah. Usually black and white stuff for me, but I love like getting a big thick book and then sitting down and scrolling through it. That kind of gives you that gallery fix as well. Yeah.
And so thinking about that as like, not just a painter, as an art lover, and a buyer of art, what am I looking for? What am I missing during this pandemic? And then so I can take that little consumer experience and translate it, like as an artist, how can I give that to my collectors? And so being able to post, I do like a bunch of time-lapse videos and things like that of my paintings in progress. That's something that people really like. So being able to,
popular.
Yeah, those ones generate a lot of interest for sure.
Isn't it crazy how popular those are? Yeah.
They're hypnotizing to watch, right?
Right. It looks like magic.
Yeah, it does, because it just happens all so fast.
Yeah.
So those types of things, I know I enjoy seeing those when I'm looking through people's profiles and taking in their art on this new digital platform of enjoying art. So I try to say, okay, if this is something that I enjoy as a collector of art and as an enjoyer of art, how can I bring that as well? And it really isn't about like, oh, look at this new piece. It is X number of dollars. You should buy it. It's like, hey, do you want to see, like, this was red behind this big sky. It was actually red. Do you want to see the broadcast video?
Yeah.
That's intriguing.
And I mean, you will get, if you're showing a lot of time lapse and stuff like that, you're going to get a lot of artists that are going to follow you. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean, if you're trying to sell your art, right? Generally, artists don't buy a lot of art. I mean, but having said that, there's also a lot of people that just like to follow artists and just kind of see that magic happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I love that you said about like the red behind your, like you probably don't have any in progress that you could show, but it's super cool how you do that. And it kind of adds like, you're looking around now, but it kind of, it's like an underpainting, right? I keep hitting my microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of adds depth to your work, right? And even though it looks blue and just blue to me, I mean, I know I've seen them, there is that red, but it's very subtle. And it just adds a little bit of depth that almost tricks your eye when you're back from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of the little secret things that are under the painting. I'm sure you have a million little secret parts to your painting because there's so many layers.
Yeah.
And just having, seen some of your bear in progress at Stampede that sold before it was finished last year, like how it moves from something fantastic that a buyer was so interested in before the painting was even done to something completely different hours later.
Yeah. And I mean, I think artists like that, but so do people that buy art. Right? They like to understand why this painting speaks to them. Like when I look at those clouds behind you, like that piece behind you is probably like my favorite piece that I've seen of yours. Like, and I loved last year you had the little barn on the yellow grass with the blue sky and the clouds going and stuff, which we were like, everyone loved, and we're like, when is someone going to buy this piece? It is so beautiful. And then you sold it like right near the end, right?
Oh yeah, there was
everyone was like, wow,
a trio of them, and I loved them and I hated them because they brought everybody into the booth and everybody talked about it, and they were almost sales all the time. And then they went, and I was so grateful again for them.
Yeah. So I love those, but I love the one behind you the most.
Thank you. It's a pretty meaningful piece. It went on a sunrise hike. Right around the solstice, which is not the best time to pick for a sunrise hike because the sunrise is really early. But as a morning person, I convinced my husband that this is a fantastic idea.
Right.
And we were hiking and it was gray. It was that sky, like just moody gray cloud. And we're hiking through the trees. And we're like, this is going to be terrible. It's raining a little bit. Hey, let's just persevere. And when we got to the top of the Prairie View lookout above Barrier Lake, there was just this band of gold, and it was pretty special. And then I needed a distraction on Father's Day. Recently lost my dad, and I needed to paint for him. And so this was the piece that that I painted for him. And
that's amazing.
And he's the guy who looks at the gray sky, in Vancouver, it's always gray.
Yeah.
Looks at the gray sky and he's like, oh, look, there's that little patch of blue, and always kind of found the light. And this piece was like just in memory of that. So it's called Remembrance and has a lot of
that's incredible. Yeah. That's really amazing.
Yeah. So lots of, I find, the fact that you like this piece, and I think, when you're painting with heart and not painting because of demand or deadlines or, this was popular, so I'll paint 3 more like that.
Right.
There's something different about a painting where it speaks to you in a different way.
Well, and I don't know what the term or the saying is, but like it doesn't necessarily feed the wallet, right? It feeds your soul.
Yeah.
Right? And it has meaning to you, and sometimes there's just something that comes through with that. And I kind of find it with that painting behind you is that there's just something about it that's different than all of the others, and it has that soul and that intention and that all of that meaning, and it comes through. Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's an amazing testament like to your dad, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah. So I think like you said, like whatever feeds your soul not necessarily feeds your wallet. But when it comes down to it, the paintings that spoke to me as I was painting them, they were something I was really passionate about, and something either, I was painting it with a certain memory in mind, or from reference photos of just a really special time in my life. Those are the paintings that generate the most interest as well. Because people can people can taste the love in it, right?
Can taste the love.
Yeah.
that should be your slogan. You can taste the love.
So not only does she lead two totally different styles, but is she like a cook too?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Geez. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably good. Hey, Carmen. I mean, goodness me, we'll end on a really high note there. Yeah. I love your work, and I miss you.
I know, I miss you too. This has been actually just so nice seeing your little face on the screen. I know it's not quite the same as sitting with a cup of coffee and chatting about art and life and everything, but thank goodness for these little things that can bring us together right now.
Yeah.
Although I would have way preferred sitting next to you in that Stampede booth.
Oh my God, I wonder if we would have been close together or
I know,
or whatever.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. I know. It sucks. Next year. And
next year is just going to be fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate this.
Yay.
Great.
Thanks, Carmen.
Take care.
Yeah.
We'll see you later.
Bye. So that can be it. You don't have to hang up. You did so good. Holy shit. You're so good, Carmen.
Thank you. I showed you my messy house, but
mine's the same.
Carefully placed right here.
I have this screen behind me, and if I move this, it's just like a